Joshua chapter 10. You remember last week we talked about the deceit of the Gibeonites. These were some people who looked at what Israel was doing and they said, maybe we ought to not fight these people. Because Jericho fought them and Jericho isn't anymore. And Ai fought them and Ai isn't anymore. So maybe we ought to employ a different strategy. So you remember they made like they had come a long distance and they were a long ways away, but they just wanted to have an ambassadorship with them and have a league with them and just, we're going to get along. We're a long ways away, you don't have to worry about us. When in reality, they were just a few miles away. They managed to trick the Israelites, and you remember why they managed to trick the Israelites. The Israelites did not ask God. They did not seek the Lord's will in the matter. Now there's a general principle there, folks, and we need to hang on to that principle. If you don't seek the Lord's will in the matter, you're going to mess up. Okay? Don't try to if and around about it. You don't seek God's will in the matter, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to mess up. Something's going to go wrong. Because you didn't seek the Lord. They didn't seek the Lord. They said, oh, we can figure this out on our own. Well, we saw what happened. The Gibeonites managed to deceive them. Gibeonites now are going to be in servanthood the rest of their life, but hey, at least they're still alive. That's more than Jericho and Ai can say. Well, now we come to verse 1 of chapter 10. And it came to pass, and for some reason this week I've had a great amount of trouble articulating this guy's name. And I think I know one of the reasons, but I finally just had to divide his name up into two pieces. Adonai Zedek. Now, if I try to say those two things together, it doesn't come out right. So, however you pronounce it, that's fine. It's like the difference between Habakkuk and Habakkuk. It's the same guy, depends on how you pronounce his name. Adonai Zedek. Or as I was tempted to call him, toward the middle of the week when I was really having trouble, I was just going to call him Zeke. But I thought that was a little too flippant. Adonai Zedek. Anyway, he is the king of Jerusalem. He'd heard how Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it, as he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, that they feared greatly. The they is Adonai Zedek. They and those with him, he's the king. They're afraid. Why? Because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities. It was just like one of the royal cities. Now, it doesn't appear that Gibeon was a royal city because the king is never mentioned in relationship to that city. Kings are all in the other cities, but not this one. But it's just like one of the major cities or the royal cities. And because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. What's wrong with this picture? Gibeon has come sneaking into the Israeli camp to try to make a league with them on false pretenses. But here's the description of Gibeon. It's just like one of the royal cities. It was bigger, mightier than Ai. And all the men were mighty. And here they come, hat in hand, trying to sneak their way into saying a lie. Well, I don't understand Gibeon, but I do understand Adoni-Zedek. He's upset. This isn't how a mighty city is supposed to operate. We need to punish this sister city of ours for doing what they did. So let's gather together and make a league of our own. And so, therefore, Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Piram, king of Jarmuth, and to Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Deber, king of Eglon, saying, Come up unto me, and help me, that we may smite Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together, went up, they and all their hosts, and encamped before Gibeon, and made war against it. What's wrong with this picture? These kings are all afraid, first of all, of Gibeon. They're also very much afraid of Israel. They want to stop Israel somehow. So they think if they just can defeat Gibeon, maybe that'll help them. In verse 6, the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua to the camp of Gilgal, saying, Slacken not thy hand from thy servants, come up to us quickly, and save us, and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. Well, here's the trickery is going to pan out. You see, Joshua and Israel had made a league with Gibeon. And they made a vow before God. And you remember, if you make a vow before God, you better keep it. God says it's better for you not to make a vow than to make a vow and break it. It'd be better if you never made a promise. Then you make a promise and don't keep it. So Israel is going to keep their promise to Gibeon. Gibeon says, hey, the 5 kings, they're arrayed against us. Come on, you're in league with us. You've got to help us. And Joshua, a man of his word, does just that. Joshua, verse 7. Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people who were with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, Fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee. Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly, and went up from Gilgal all night, made a night march. It appears to have been about 24 miles. That's a pretty good hike on one night. And the Lord discomforted them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them all along the way that goeth up to Beth-horon, and smote them to Azekah and unto Makkedah. They came to pass as they were fled before Israel, when the going down of Beth-horon, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. There were more which died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. The Lord was with Joshua. The Lord was with Israel. So much so that actually God killed more people than Joshua and Israel did with the hailstones. It looks like the deceit of Gibeon was beneficial. And on a physical, material level, it was. They were delivered. But I have a question. And my question is this. Something is about to happen. And it is something so huge, something so spectacular, something so miraculous, as to still cause discussion thousands of years later. Because preachers are not in agreement with what is about to happen. Not that it didn't happen, but why and exactly how it happened. And there are gentlemen who have a lot more initials behind their names than I do. And they're more educated. And many times I am quite simple. And I'll just read something and I'll just say, well, that's what happened. Let's read on then. Pick up verse 12. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said, in the sight of Israel, sun, that's S-U-N, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. You know what I think happened? I think the sun stood still. That's how simple I am. But that's physically impossible. The whole system would be just thrown out of kilter if the sun stood still. Now, of course, the sun isn't going to stand still. The earth just stopped rotating. What would happen if the earth started to stop rotating? Well, in the first place, you and I wouldn't be here, because we're still rotating. If the ground stopped, we wouldn't. We'd be flying through, well, which direction, which I can't remember which way we'd be going, but one of them, we'd be heading someplace. It's just physically impossible. You can't have the sun stand still. You can't have the moon stand still. It just can't happen. But you see, I don't have a problem with that. Somebody asked a question a while ago. How big is your God? When we're little, just growing up, we hear the reference to the fact that God is your Father. And little minds, they glom onto that word, Father. I know that word. I have one of them. I have a daddy. And I look at my dad and I say, that's a father, and God is my father, therefore my God, that God must be like him, and he must be like God. It didn't take very long for me to realize my dad was not God. But as I'm growing up, the attributes of my father made sense in relation to my God. Too many times, we limit ourselves to our concept of my dad and transfer that over to God. How big is your God? As we look at the majesty of God, as we begin to realize just how awesome God really is. What comes into our minds when we think about God? And that will be always the most important thought we will ever have. What do we think about God? We have a statement of faith here at First Baptist Church. It lists the things we believe about God, and it's important to have that, and it's a good one. But it's not the most important thing. Because the most important thing we believe is what we believe in here. You see, I can read, get a hold of some paper that has a statement of faith on it, and I can sit there and nod my head, yep, yep. What's really going on in here? What do I really think about my God? It's what in the deepest part of my heart I conceive God to be like. Compared to that, a creedal statement, a statement of faith, is of very little consequence. If you want to know what you believe about God, get yourself into a tough situation. Get yourself in a situation where, as Paul over in 2 Corinthians, the first chapter, where you despair of your life, now what do you think about your God? How big is your God? A correct conception about God is not only important for systematic theology, for an understanding of the Bible, but also for practical Christian living. What do I really believe about my God will show up in the dark times more clearly than it shows up in the bright times. What do I believe about my God? What do I believe about His majesty? What do I believe about His sovereignty? What do I believe about His rule? Do I believe that He created the heavens and the earth? Do I believe that He sustains that creation by the word of His power? There has to be a vision of God, high and lifted up. I look at Joshua here. And he says, in the sight of Israel, did you notice that? He's not praying this in the privacy of his closet. He's standing up in front of the crowd. Anybody within the sound of his voice hears his words. And he's not mumbling a little prayer down here. He's praying aloud to his God. And he says, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, moon in the valley of Ajalon. That's audacious. That's first of all believing that God is the creator of the heavens and the earth, and that everything in His creation is right here. He has, as the song goes, the whole world in His hand. And the God who can say, let there be light, and there's light. is a God who can, because he's controlling everything by the word of his power, stop that sun and that moon in relation to the earth. The God who created it, the God who sustained it, can certainly do anything he wants to with it. So I don't have any trouble with it happening here. How do you explain the miracle? Asked and answered right there. I don't explain miracles because it's a miracle. And miracles are inexplainable. If you could explain it, it wouldn't be a miracle. Come on, folks. It's a miracle. Yes, God did it. And it says he did it. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. There was no, in verse 14, there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. It's an amazement. God fought for Israel. And God fought for Israel because that's what God wanted to do. And God's will is always done. But the amazing part to me is Joshua standing there in front of the people and asking God to have the sun stand still. Now you can argue about whether it happened or didn't happen. To your heart's content, go ahead. You already know my position on it. But I do know something about Joshua. I don't ask you to do something that I'm pretty sure you can't do. If I ask you to do something, I have the sneaking suspicion and probably a conviction that you can do it. I wouldn't ask you otherwise. And here's Joshua asking God, make the sun stand still. Make the moon stand still. You see, Joshua had a very big God. Yes, Joshua had seen God do some very big things. But folks, come on. As it just told us, there was never a day like this before. Joshua had grown up in Egypt. He'd been a slave. He'd probably been involved in the building of the pyramids and all. He had seen the 10 plagues. He'd seen the original Passover. He had seen the crossing of the Red Sea. He had seen the manna from heaven. He had seen the water from the rock. He had seen everything that God did with Moses through the 40 years in the wilderness. Joshua has seen God stop the river and cross over. He has seen Jericho. Joshua has seen Ai. He's seen some great things. But folks, let me tell you, he'd never seen anything like this. But what he had seen about God led him to believe that God can do anything. You have not because you asked not. It was not going to be Joshua's problem. I want to ask something that's never been seen before. Because I believe a God as big as my God can do it. So what do we learn? Well, we learn that the Lord fought for Israel. Oh, yeah. We also learn that our God is a great God. And the sooner we come to this realization, the better off we're going to be. My God is a greater God than I can even imagine. I cannot ask God to do something He can't do. I could ask Him to go against His will, against His character, yes. But there's nothing I can ask God to do that He couldn't do. Not that He would, but He could. The sooner we realize that our God is at the very least this big, the sooner our prayers will honor our God. Are you facing some big thing? Well, maybe not as big as the sun standing still, but you're facing something big. Remember, Joshua. Remember the sun standing still. Remember, my God is a great God. And while I have a little faith, I have a little faith in a great God. Let's pray. Father, we confess before you this morning that we don't fully understand you. We have not plumbed the depths of your power. We have not seen everything that could be done. Father, by the power of your Spirit, help us to see the greatness of our God. Increase our vision. Increase our concern. Father, increase our faith. In Christ's name we ask it.